For this exercise, you're going to be creating a high fidelity mock-up of this weather app. Now, to get started, you should have downloaded the folder that has the After Effects file as well as the footage file inside of it. Notice that inside of this footage file, you've got an Illustrator file that has all of the assets needed already laid out. In addition, they've given you a Photoshop file that you can place your final rendering into to show what it would look like if it was mocked up inside of this screen. This will be the last thing that they do to pull it together. So to get started, let me close out this project and let's open up the Start file to get started. Once it's open, do make sure you're working in the pre-comp, for the menu assets. And if you don't already see it open, you can double click on it to work there. The first thing we need to do is to move our current time indicator to 1 second, which should be right here. And let's work on the Sunday through Monday layer first. With this layer selected, type the P on your keyboard to open the position properties. Let's click on the stopwatch to add our keyframe, and then let's back it up to 1 second and 5 frames. We're actually moving forward for this one. Then we can set our position's numeric value to be 375 all the way down to 350. Then let's move forward to 1 second and 20 frames, and we can set our position value to be 375 to 200. This will move it up, and so now it has a little move down and then back up kind of feature. As always, let's select all 3 of our keyframes and add some easy ease by hitting F9 for each one of those. Next, we want to do a similar action to move Wednesday and Thursday layers out of the way. So I'm going to back my current time indicator back up to 1 second. Let's make sure the Wednesday and Thursday layers are selected as we hit the position keyframe. We can turn on our first keyframe at 1 second. Let's move forward to 1 second and 5 frames, and we can set our value at 375 with 1050 as our second value. So that'll move it up a little bit. And then let's set it down to 1 second and 20 frames and set our new position to value to be 375 and 1300 frames. As with the other one, let's go ahead and select all 3 of these keyframes. Hit F9 to add some easy ease. So now when I back up so I can see the whole thing, it should look something like this. That looks good. Now what we want to do is to have the Tuesday text move up and have the little weather appear. Let me zoom back in so we can actually see what we're working with on this layer. We'll move our current time indicator back down to 1 second and 5 frames. And let's select the Tuesday text layer. From here, we can type P to open up our little position, and we can click on the stopwatch to add our current keyframe right at this 1 second and 5 frames. Next, we can move over to that 1 second and 20 frames, and let's change its position to be 299, but down to 600, and that'll actually move it up into place there. Next, we can turn on visibility for our Tuesday weather. So click on the little eyeball icon so we can see the weather text down there. With this Tuesday weather selection layer already turned on, let's type the P key to open up the position. And let's do Shift T, to do the opacity for both of those as well. We'll set our current time indicator back at 1 second and 5 frames. Let's turn on a position and opacity keyframe right there. Let's set the opacity's value initially to start off at 0%. So this will start off completely transparent, can't see it. Then we can move our current time indicator forward to 1 second and 20 frames. Let's set our position's value now to be 453, but change the second value to be 800. Then we can go down to our opacity value and bring it up to 100% here. Now that'll move everything into place as well as fading it in. So when it plays, it should look something like that. As always, we can select all of our keyframes for both of those layers, hit F9 to add some easy ease to both of those so that when it transitions really nicely. Next, we want to use our graph editor and let's refine the timing of this animation. We'll take it one layer at a time. Choose your Sunday and Monday layer and open up your graph editor and make sure you've got the word position selected. From here, we can go down to our graph editor and let's select this first little Bezier handle and drag it all the way till it reaches 100% of influence. Next, we can select the last Bezier handle. Let's drag it all the way to the left here till the influence is 100% and it looks something like this. Next, we can select the Wednesday layer, and if you don't see the position, remember you can type the U key so that you can see it. And when you select the position for this, we'll do the same thing as well. We'll drag this first little Bezier handle all the way to the right and this last one all the way to the left, so that now when they open up, I'll back out so we can see it. They both open up at exactly the same time. While we're here, we can select the position value for the Tuesday text. Let's click on this right one and drag its value all the way to the left to give us this value. And let's click on the Tuesday weather, and we'll do the position of this one, also clicking it all the way to the left, as well as the opacity, bring that to the left as well. So now, when everything is played together, we'll zoom out so we can see the whole thing. It opens up nicely with a nice little bounce to everything that they've got. With this done, let's close out our graph panel. If need be, you can hit the U key to close up all of your keyframes as well. We'll back up, and let's change the color of this Tuesday area so that it changes once it opens up as well. And we'll do that with an effect. Let's select the blue background layer at the bottom, and with it selected, let's go up to Effect, down to Color Correction, and at the very bottom, there we go, we want to choose a tint. Inside of these options, let's map the black area by clicking on that value. We'll set the RGB values right here to be an R value of 250, a green value of 175, and a blue value of 40. We'll click OK to that. We can also map the white value to be the same thing essentially, so it'll turn the whole thing into a different color. With this, we'll set the R value to be 250, the green value to be 175, and the blue value to be 40. Now to animate this, we're going to set our current time indicator to be 1 second and 5 frames. This is when we want it to start. And we'll set the tint amount value to initially start off at 0%. And we can turn on the stopwatch to animate it from here. Then as it opens up, we can move our current time indicator forward to 1 second and 20 frames. Then we can go back up to our tint amount value and set it to be 100%. So between these two, as it opens up, you can see how it changes that color. Now remember, in order to see the keyframes down here, you can press the U key. This will show you the values for your tint along your timeline. And if you wanted to add Easy Ease, you can do it to both of those as well. Once we're finished, we can close everything up. Let's give it a little play test. That looks good. Now for the next part of this project, we want to have a little animated cursor move itself into position and click on the area. Rather than just making this as a new layer, we're actually going to use it as an entirely separate composition. So going over to our project panel, if you need to, you can close out this effect to move out to the projects. Let's make a new composition. Go up to Composition, choose New Composition. From here, we're going to call this our Pre-Comp Cursor Animation. The size of it, as far as the width goes, needs to be 750 pixels, and the height will be 1334 pixels. Their aspect ratio can still be square pixels with a frame rate of 29.97. The duration of this simply needs to be 3 seconds long, so not terribly long at all. Everything else will be exactly the same, and we'll say OK to this. You can see doing this puts it inside of the comps folder, and since we're working in this cursor animation comp, let's drag this menu assets comp into the timeline so that we can build our little cursor on top of this. To make our cursor, do make sure nothing is selected down here. And you can hold the Shift Command A to deselect all of the layers. From here, we can go up to our toolbox, click and hold on your rectangle, and choose the ellipse tool. We'll go down here to the bottom, and holding the Shift key, you can click and drag to make a perfect circle. That'll be big enough for there. You can see how it adds the layer down here. And we'll change the color of it. Let's set the fill color to be just a solid white and say OK. And remember, you can hold the Option key as you click on stroke until it creates a no stroke inside of that area, just giving you a white circle to work with. Let's go down to our layer and select that Shape Layer 1. Hit the Return key and let's call this our cursor layer. If it's not already twirled open, you can open it up, locate the Ellipse 1 contents and Ellipse Path 1. Let's set the size of it to be exactly 150 by 150 pixels. That way it's all a unique same size. With this layer still selected, we'll move our current time indicator back to the very beginning, press the P key to pull up the position's starting value, and we'll set a starting position keyframe right here at 0, 0. Next, we can move up to frame number 20, right there. And let's set our next position value, to be 106 by 675. And that will move it up and into place to select that number. We can add some easy ease to both of those by hitting F9. And as it's moving up, let's also increase its opacity as it moves too. Bringing our current time indicator back down to the 0, 0 frame, we can do Shift T to open up the opacity. Let's click on the opacity to start a keyframe right at the beginning, and we'll set our initial opacity at 0%. Then we can move forward to the frame number 20 again, and we'll set our opacity all the way up to 100% here. Now, as it's moving forward and coming into position, we want to simulate a little tap just after it moves into position. So move your current time indicator to the 25th frame, and let's type in Shift S to add the scale property. We'll click on the stopwatch to add the keyframe to the 25th frame. Then we can move forward to the first second frame. Let's set the scale's value down to 80%, indicating that it's being pressed down. And then we can move forward to 1 second and 10 frames. And then we'll set our scale value back up to 130%. And then we'll also scrub down the opacity of it to be at 0%, so it completely fades away. As with the others, let's apply Easy Ease to those new scale frames. So when it animates and moves into place, simple little press is all that it's needed. With this finished, we can close up all of our layers, and the last thing we need to do is to make a composition that allows us to put everything mocked up. So going back to our project panel, you can double-click this gray area to bring up the importer. Let's find the footage folder and select the phone frame Photoshop file. We want to bring this in as a regular composition, so make sure Import as Composition is selected when we say Open. Give it a second and we'll say OK to this. And this will place a phone frame inside of our comps area. And if you need to, we can click and drag into the comps folder. From here, double-click the phone frame comp. And this will bring up what it looks like inside of Photoshop. In order to place our composition inside of this frame, we can go to our project panel, choose your cursor animation pre-comp, and drag it below the phone frame layer. You can see how it's visible inside of the frame itself. We do need to scale this down, so with that layer selected, press the S key to open up the scale value. Let's scale it down to be 53%, so that it fits nicely inside that area. Of course, in order to be able to see it, we need to drag it over until it fits inside of that area. From here, we can press play to preview it and see what it looks like. Once finished, let's render our file. Make sure to save your After Effects file with your name on it. We can then choose our pre-comp with our cursor animation. Pre-comp with our photo frame pre-comp. Now we can go to File, down to Export, and let's add it to our render queue. From here, just make sure you know where it's going to output to, and then save your movie file and export it and upload it to the class page.